According to Media Research Center, there are Biden family scandals that the media is ignoring, even as Hunter Biden's gun trial starts. Joining me now to talk about this is Curtis Hauk, managing editor of MRC Newsbusters. Curtis, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Stacey.
All right, so I'm super glad to have something else to discuss, but I'm half in and half out because, Curtis, I've had people call into the radio show, leftists, to justify the prosecution of Trump on all of these different cases. They're saying, the thing is, Hunter Biden's being prosecuted, Menendez is being prosecuted, and they go down this list of Democrats who are also facing trials for whatever thing that they've been doing that they're usually actually guilty of. So I don't want them using this as a justification to prosecute Trump. But on the other hand, Hunter Biden's really been up to some bad things.
Well, that's putting it mildly, Stacey. I mean, yeah, his trial is getting started, and the media are interested in it. Through last night, the networks ABC, CBS, NBC spent 17 minutes and 20 seconds, but that pales in comparison to the 30 minutes and 8 seconds that they had spent through 2 days of the Trump trial. But also, when you look at the coverage, it's far more sympathetic to Hunter Biden. The media, the networks have even labeled this mid-50s person, Stacey, as a child. That's been the word that they've used to describe Hunter Biden. He's a child on trial, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but this is the liberal media we're dealing with. Any way that they can spin for Hunter Biden, the Biden family, ahead of Joe's 2024 re-election campaign, they will certainly do that. We at the Media Research Center have been looking at, periodically posting 5, 8, 10, 11, in this one 5 new Hunter Biden family or Biden family crime stories that they are ignoring. Most notably, I think a lot of viewers may know about this one, was documents showing Hunter Biden used a Sandy Hook memorial gathering to set up a meeting between Joe and a Chinese business partner. Our friends at the New York Post had this one, finding that it was in December 12th of 2017 that he messaged a Chinese energy executive about arranging a meeting between Joe Biden. And because he was in New York and near Connecticut, they somehow made this work. So it's pretty despicable. Could you imagine, Stacey, if a Republican going to visit like the 9/11 memorial and then going to meet with a businessman from a foreign adversary? Oh boy.
No, I can't. But so you don't have to be an investigative journalist or someone who pays attention to a lot of news to notice there's a pattern. It's Joe Biden in Washington, D.C., getting ever increasing access to power and influence, right? He starts out as a congressman, then he's a sitting U.S. senator. And then from his Senate perch, he basically has access to everyone powerful. And you see him interacting with these people. It's not just the photographs, it's the logs of the plane rides, not just when he was the vice president, but when he was a senator, the people that he interacted with. And then you see the intersection between his son's dealings, their business, their family business, which his brother is involved in. And so you have, Uncle Joe, you have crazy Uncle Joe, who's the president, but his brother, Hunter's uncle, the two of them kind of traveling around the world and basically tossing down chips and markers like mobsters. Hey, I think we need $5 million. And for a nation, right? It's one thing to ask Curtis or Stacy for $5 million. That's a no-go. But if you ask the entire country of China, $5 million isn't even a rounding error for them. They could easily plop that down. But the question is, why would they? Because Curtis, if you and I chartered a flight to China, could we even get a meeting with someone who could give us $5 million? So there's some there with this whole thing.
Right, and that's always been one of my biggest grievances with the liberal media, which is when Joe, especially when he was vice president, Hunter would ride on Air Force Two with him to whatever Middle Eastern country he was going to, or China, to get a ride, and then Hunter would then go off on these business meetings while Joe would go and meet with official, government leaders about whatever it is that he was officially there to talk about. And for nobody in the liberal media to be like, yeah, that doesn't look good. Maybe we should look into that, especially now because Joe Biden is the president of the United States. That just shows the complete double standard of the liberal media. Could you imagine, again, to bring up this double standard, if Donald Trump Jr. was on Air Force One with his father and Donald Trump went to, I don't know, the Middle East somewhere, flew into Saudi Arabia and had meetings with Middle Eastern officials, while Junior went and had meetings with, investment funds connected to the Saudi government about a Trump golf course. The liberal media would be all over this. 60 Minutes, CNN, Jake Tapper would have very pensive monologues about how they're not doing the people's work, and the New York Times would do these long investigative pieces, huffing and puffing about what a danger this is to our national security. But there's not really coverage of any of that on the broadcast networks. Instead, again, they paint Hunter Biden as a child, someone who struggled with addiction. Joe is being a loving father by enveloping him. NBC, in particular, has been shameless in noting in its trial coverage thus far that Joe hasn't shunned his son or kept him at arm's distance, or at least created the appearance of a wall of separation in this trial. They've shamelessly noted that he was at the most recent state dinner. He's been at the number of state dinners. He spent time at the White House. He's been shown riding with Joe Biden just this past weekend in Rehoboth on a bike ride. And they say that, oh, this is through it all, Joe's been a loving father. Instead of pointing out ethically, there's concerns about all of this.
Yeah, and we do actually have some recent examples, because when President Trump was in office, his sons were running the Trump Organization, which is a hotel and golf empire, with buildings spanning the globe, and they have a specific hotel it's in Russia. And when each of the two sons would transact business, and they have to go to this hotel, they have to visit their properties, there would be stories on Axios and other places like that where they would say that the hotel itself was a means by which the Russians could funnel money into the Trump family. And I thought that was so ridiculous, since the hotel has been there for decades. It's been there since the Apprentice days, and yet we had that going on.
This is that's an official business, like that's a known entity, the Trump Organization, in business to do X. Whereas the Biden family, like, what is Hunter doing? What is Joe doing? It's influence peddling. Does Hunter even know how, like, solar panels work? Does he know how oil wells are drilled? Does he know anything about these Chinese energy companies he was doing business with? Does he know anything about how natural gas works? How does fracking work when he worked at Burisma? Of course he didn't, because he's Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, and he readily admits these things. This is what we saw with the Clintons, Stacey, where they were so shameless about it. And we're honestly just supposed to believe that, oh, they were just doing, that they're a business and people were interested in them. So, of course, I took the meeting. It's like Hillary Clinton talking about cattle futures. She's like, I did very well just because I read the Wall Street Journal. And the media just were like, okay, sounds good to us. Let's move on. You're like, no sane person honestly believes this. And again, that's why it's really helpful for us in this day and age to have the comparison of the Trump family as a double standard to show them how they would react on the other side. It's not a hypothetical, it's reality.
It is, and it actually happened, and we were all alive. Like, this isn't one of those, oh, that happened in the 1900s, I wasn't born then. Right. No, this happened 3 years ago. I'm so glad you could join us again, Curtis. You guys do all the heavy lifting for us, so we don't have to watch every bit of the news you do. You are the managing editor of MRC Newsbusters. Thank you so much for coming on again. Have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks, Stacey. Newsbusters.org. Thank you.
Newsbusters.org. Check it out, everyone. And up next, we have BMW admitting the obvious about their Rainbow Month virtue signaling. It turns out they don't do that everywhere. I'll show you prime examples when we get back.